Happy Friday. Welcome back again to yet another Winked Unplugged. And this week we are going to unpack an emotion that comes up so often for a lot of us, at least for me, and it is guilt. It was fascinating this week because I get my inspiration for things from things that have happened in the week. So a couple of days back, Aniket, my husband, and myself, we were walking down the river, which is where we stay, and I bumped into a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in a long, long time, a colleague. We used to work together. And it was so nice to just catch up with her, and she asked me how I was doing and how the last 1 year was. And it's time where New York has started opening up. There was a live band playing by the river. There were lots of people just hanging out. And looking at me, she kind of started feeling guilty and she said, "Oh my God, I hope everybody in India," she knows my family's in India, "everybody's doing okay. I feel so guilty that we in the US are doing okay and everything's open up and people are having such a good time, whereas there are other parts of the world that are still struggling." And I was amazed that the feeling that I triggered for her was guilt because she felt really bad that my family, potentially my friends back home, may not be having the same openness, the same ability to move around in a good time, and a lot of people have even lost loved ones, whereas in the US everything's okay. And it was fascinating how this guilt came up for her. And then I'm having another conversation with a friend of mine this week, and she is struggling with guilt again. And it is that she did really well last year in her job, and she got a really good bonus. And she's feeling guilty that at a time when so many people are struggling to make ends meet, now she has all of this money. And she's like, "I don't know whether I should have it. I feel guilty about having it." And it made me pause and think about guilt and how this feeling of blame, self-blame, shows up in our life again and again in such subtle ways. So today we're going to unpack this feeling of guilt, this feeling of self-blame that all of us indulge in some way, shape, or form. So some amount of guilt is healthy, right? So guilt in some ways can be in two forms. It can be healthy or it can be unhealthy. Now, if we've done something wrong, or we've hurt somebody, or we have harmed somebody, then it's natural that as a human being we feel bad about it, right? If we don't feel a pinch, then something inside is quite dead. So it's very, very natural that we feel bad, and we know it. Emotionally we know it the moment we have triggered somebody by our words, by our action, knowingly or unknowingly. I was having a conversation with my mom a few weeks back. It was late at night, and I'm in the midst of having crazy hours with Winked because we were looking to launch our app. Yes, we're going to be launching our app in a month from now. And it's been really crazy, and I had to go get some doctor's tests done and some follow-ups and stuff like that, regular stuff. And as a mom, she's really worried about it. And I was like, "Mom, I really don't have the time. I need to get this done." And she went on, "No, I need to take care of my health." And it was 11 or 12 o'clock at night for me. I was already tired. I was exhausted. And guess what happened? I became a little short with her. I snapped. And the moment that happened, I knew, and it wasn't like I snapped badly, but I knew my voice had raised a little bit. It had become a little irritable. And I noticed a reaction on the other side. She became quiet. She pulled back. And she let it go because she realized I was tired. And immediately the guilt happened. Oh my God, she wants nothing but the best for me. Why am I doing this? And immediately I sent her a note apologizing, and of course she understood. But when we do things like that, we know it and we feel the pinch. And that is why guilt can serve us to not do things like this, which we know hurts the other person and in turn hurts us too. So that is guilt being healthy, right? And we all need to have a little bit of it. The second one is when it's not so healthy. Second one is the examples I just gave you of my friends, feeling guilty about being able to enjoy life in the US while other parts of the world are still suffering. Having had a really good year and bonus where people don't have money. And there's another friend of mine, it's amazing how money can make us feel so guilty, something that we need and a lot of times we want. And yet when we have it, we feel guilty. So I have a friend of mine, and he comes from a very modest background. And he's done really well for himself. But he feels so guilty. And he says, every time I look at, people in the streets who are not doing so well, or people that he knows about that are struggling with money, it makes him feel guilty that he's actually doing pretty well. And it this kind of guilt is not healthy, right? Things that we're taking responsibility for that are not really our responsibility. What can we do about it? What can we do about either doing well in life, or having money, or being able to travel when other people are not? I think this kind of guilt, whether it comes internally, self-imposed, because a lot of times it's internal, something in us feels triggered, or it can also come from the outside, right? A lot of times, I remember when I took my year of sabbatical and I was traveling the world over, friends of mine would be like, Ruchika, you're having such a good time, and Aniket is in New York working so hard. And for a minute, I would like step back and say, oh my God, am I doing something wrong? Should I not be having fun? Should I be in New York with my husband? It makes you step back and pull back and say, oh, am I doing something right? Should I be doing something different? Or should I not be having fun or feeling guilty about having fun? And that is not so healthy. So let's unpack that a little bit for us. So why do we feel that guilt? In a very subtle level, we feel like we're responsible for things that we have no control over, or we feel like we have control over things. Do you recognize that? That, oh, the world should move in this way, or I shouldn't be doing this, or I should be doing this. How much control do we really have? How much control do we have that we're feeling fine and somebody else is not, and you feel guilty about being happy? It's as ridiculous, if I may say so, as a doctor feeling guilty that the doctor's healthy while his or her patients are not. And somehow when you think about it in the context of a doctor, it feels like, oh my God, yes, that's so silly. But we are doing exactly the same thing. Just because there's misery on the planet does not mean we need to be guilty about being happy. In fact, if you're not happy, how will we radiate that to other people? How will we take care of other people? Which is not saying to be insensitive, but don't feel guilty about the happiness, feel guilty about the joy, feel guilty about success. Of course, balance it, recognize there are other people who may not have it, right? So that's number one. The second thing also is recognize that the ego has gotten entangled in a really big way. When we think that we can change stuff, or this is, I should not be feeling this way, or I should not be feeling happy when other people are unhappy, or the world should be happy. In a very subtle way, just recognize guilt is a way of making your ego alive. It's not letting you just be simple, natural. Have you seen kids? Kids don't really care when other people are laughing or crying. Of course, they're sensitive, so they'll pick it up. But they're so centered in who they are. Right? There's no guilt over there, and there's no, I shouldn't be feeling like this. You're feeling the way you're feeling. Embrace it. Be with it. Rather than, oh, I should not. And this is where the ego comes in and makes it even tougher and entangles us even more. And recognize what happens with guilt. With guilt, it eats us up from inside. If we feel we've done something that we shouldn't do, which is the healthy guilt, even over there, we need to do whatever we need to do to make amends, to make it right if we can, and then we have to drop it. We can't be carrying it for 20 years and 30 years, or even months. Oh my God, I shouldn't have done that. Because guess what's happening? At a very subtle level, you're beating yourself down. You're blaming yourself. And when you beat yourself down and you blame yourself, you don't want to go towards yourself. Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar always says, you don't want to go towards somebody who you blame. So when you blame yourself, you cut the connection that you have with yourself, which is the most important connection on the planet. So whether it's healthy or unhealthy, it's important to realize that what guilt is doing is eating us up from inside. It's severing the only connection that really, really matters is the connection with ourselves, the connection with our best self. And the more self-blame and guilt we have, the more we sow seeds like that for us in the future. So, what do? how do we move on from here? Just recognize that whatever emotion's coming up is coming up. It's okay. It's okay to be successful when other people may not be. Just ensure that there's humility, because there's so much to do with right place, right time. Right? So if you can be centered in all the positive things that are happening in your life and not feel guilty, that is the fine balance. It's embracing it like you would embrace down times too, or bad times too. And second is recognize that you're not the same person that you were a few weeks back when you spoke harshly with your mother. You're a different person today. You're like that stream that's flowing, and in the present moment, no matter what has happened, you are innocent. You are new. You are free. Right? And give yourself a chance to be free in this moment and not let the baggage of the past carry through in this moment and bury us down through guilt and self-blame. And of course, practices. Things like breathing, things like meditation, they allow us perspective. We can see life from a bigger context. And we realize that, life is moving with a plan, with an intelligence. And we don't always have control over that intelligence or plan. And thank God for it, because it's much more intelligent than us. And the moment we recognize that, it sets us free. Yeah? So I'm just going to pause over there. I know we've just scratched the surface of this very complex emotion called guilt. And I'm going to see if there are any questions. I see a few people here. Hello, good to see all of you. I hope you are having a good Friday. So anything on guilt that you would like to ask or share, so that we can all learn together, grow together, and adult joyfully together. Okay, so if there aren't any questions, just remember that you're doing the best you can at any moment, right? And if you knew any better in that moment, you would do it differently. Second, if there is something you can do to make amends, do that, change it. And then learn the lesson. What have you learned through the situation? And drop this feeling of blame and guilt. Recognize that you are not the person you were even an hour back. You're like that flowing river where the water is ever fresh. You can't put your foot in the same water again and again, is what Gurudev says. Right? So you are that. You're changing, you're new, and you're innocent in this moment. So move with that the next time this feeling of guilt comes up. Yes, guilt reduces as you grow spiritually, 100%, because you recognize that you're not really the doer. And we take so much doership on things that we can do and things that we cannot do. We think we're responsible for everything, not recognizing there's a much bigger power at play. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with those thoughts, and I will see you again next Friday, and we will find another topic which comes in the way of us adulting joyfully.